Hey guys, welcome to Khanvolution. My name's Khan, and if you guys are joining me right now, chances are you might have seen my reaction to Rwby Volume 6, Chapter 3, titled The Lost Fables, which is by far the most hyped chapter of Rwby, at least by you guys, since all the way from Volume 1, and I can definitely see why now, because that freaking chapter blew my mind. Holy shit, it's my favorite chapter of Rwby thus far, and you guys were right. Like, it's insane, and I'm actually looking, like, by the time I'm caught up with Rwby, I can't wait to see other people's reactions to this episode, more so than any other episodes in Rwby thus far. You know I'm a whore for lore. I love me some lore galore, bro. So this episode was just pure lore. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was absolutely freaking magnificent. This is probably one of my favorite episodes of any anime out there, like an individual isolated episode out of any anime out there. So one of my favorites, of course. I love when a series or any like story give us these grand reveals. You know, it feels like there is such a payoff for having started this series, you know what I'm saying? So obviously I gave like a little 7-minute mini discussion at the end of my Rwby Volume 6 Chapter 3 reaction, which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked it out, I'll leave the link in the description below, as well as up here, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. But for joining back with me for this, I don't even know how long this discussion is gonna go on for, but you know, I thought long and hard about the format of how I'm going to do this discussion. Am I going to go by a typical table of contents, you know, level of discussing as I've done in the past with some of my other discussion videos, or am I just going to do like sort of an informal thing? And I took a shit ton of notes, like pages and pages of notes. Like, seriously, there is so much to dive into. So much that I even went over on my Discord and I actually asked a couple of you guys over there. It's like, hey, I'm going to be discussing Rwby after a few days after I've checked out the initial video. Is there any little details that you guys want me to discuss? And some of you guys actually did respond to me over there, like, you know, Mute Parasol, Mag Attack, Effortless Fury, Leroy, Synapse, and Silhouette Against the Rose. So I'm gonna be addressing some of the content that you guys posted over there, like some of the questions that you guys want me to delve into. For example, like Mute Parasol, you wanted me to discuss a little bit about like Salem's present day motivations. What do you think about the gods? Yeah or nay? Are they a force of good? Do they do the right thing? Are we better off without them? Did you notice any of the traditional 2D animation? Okay, wait, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'll delve into that a little bit more. That's why I have this like Discord page open, and some the Synapse as well as, you know, Effortless Fear. You guys also want me to talk about, you know, like the concept of the gods, and I'll delve into like their individual comments going forward. But I got like a huge train ride of notes, you know, discussing, you know, the different stuff that I'm gonna be like, you know, focusing on. So basically, I broke up this discussion into 3 levels. Basically, level 1, 2, and 3, obviously. So level 1 is gonna be very objective, like the objective analysis of the episodes itself, basically discussing, you know, like we go from beginning to end, focusing mainly on Salem and Ozpin's, or Ozma's in this case, journey throughout the episode. You know what I'm saying? With minor little details thrown in about like Jin's form of storytelling. And level 2 is going to be more talking about subjective stuff, like concepts of the old world versus the new world, old gods versus the new gods, and talking more about like the deities and magic overall. And level 3 is where it's like total mind effery, you know what I'm saying? It's just like what this episode has given me is an ending goal. You know, like I see the end in sight. I see sort of like the light at the end of the tunnel of this series. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, you guys have had opportunity to watch this episode multiple times. I'm sure you guys have read like forums of theory videos and like, you know, multiple theories. So a lot of the stuff that I say right now, it might come off as like, probably will come off as sounding very amateuristic because I just watched the episode like just like one day ago. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, bear with me. I know a lot of the stuff I'm saying right now it might have been told 100 times, and you guys have probably listened to it, you know, hundreds and hundreds of times. But these are just my thoughts, and I'm hoping that by the end of the discussion, you guys might go away with maybe learning 1 or 2 new concepts or ideas or something like that. I don't know. But there's a whole lot to discuss. Obviously, like Ozpin and Salem, the concepts of the relics, the concepts of the maidens, you know, the concept of the freaking moon, dude, the silhouette against the moon, bro, the ultimate silhouette against the moon. You don't know how much that scene hit the inner fanboy in me. If you don't know, go check out my chapter 3 reaction, because I pretty much lost my shit for about like 5 minutes over there because of that scene. Holy shit, this chapter is just so freaking good. But anyways, I'm not gonna say no more. Let's go ahead and dive into the level 1 of the storytelling, and I might go off on a tangent and dive into some level 2, but I'll let you guys know when I do. So let's go ahead and talk about some stuff. I'm going to start off a little bit with something that Silhouette Against the Rose posted on my Discord, and it says, remember when Ozpin said that he made more mistakes than any man, woman, or child in the world? I got you, bro. I know. You guys told me to pay attention to that quote back in Rwby Volume 1. What chapter was it? Like chapter 8 or something? 7 or 8? Right after Weiss fights the Borbotusk and they have their individual conversations with Professor Port and Rwby has with Ozpin and stuff. It's crazy, yeah, because the way Ozpin talks to Rwby, like, I'll delve into this. There's a whole lot of shit to discuss about like why Ozpin sort of favors Team Rwby, why he shows a little bit of favoritism to certain teams and whatnot. You could draw so many parallels from this chapter alone. Another thing is like this, the overall form of storytelling in this episode. It's all a sort of phantasm created by Jin, you know? She literally stopped time. And I was kind of wondering, like, you know, what's the purpose of this form of storytelling? Because, you know, like whenever any series goes into like a new form of art style, you know, which this episode has done, like the smoky blue effect of, you know, Jin conjuring these like images, sort of virtual 3D experience. In my volume 6 chapter 2 reaction, in the discussion I posted about, I discussed that Jin was summoning this sort of noble phantasm or reality marble, and everybody was getting sucked into it. However, Catalyst 1391 actually mentioned that you actually thought that it was more Jin is the smoke, and she just kind of dematerialized and is creating the thing with her own body. She's creating the images and everything by herself, through herself, with her entity, sort of, you know, with her existence as the blue smoke. So that kind of got me thinking a little bit. And while watching this episode, there were literally moments where you know, Crow and Team Rwby, and I'm guessing Maria Calavera, even though she's not shown in the actual episode themselves, they are within that space, including Oscar, which is a really good thing. I'll get into that. However, when they try to interact with the characters in the reality, in the storytelling Marvel universe, you know what I'm saying? It's not the characters that turn into smoke. It's our characters, the real characters. Like for example, Crow tried to touch Ozma at one point, and then Ozma went through Crow, not Ozma turning into smoke, but Crow turning into smoke. You know what I mean? So think about it that way, and that got me thinking that what if our characters are still, their bodies are still in that time vortex? Time stopped. Well, time is still flowing at its normal pace, but it's the perception of time. It's the characters, their spirits have sort of entered this new reality marble created by Jin, through Jin, and they've been taken in sort of spirit form as smoke figures into Jin's reality world, you know what I'm saying? So that's why the characters are more real than the actual, the story characters are more real than our actual characters. That's why they're the ones turning into smoke and not these storybook characters, you know what I'm saying? I'm not explaining it very well, but I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. Go back and watch the episode and you'll see that sort of happening. Crow tries to reach for Ozma, and then his hand just suddenly turns into smoke as Ozma goes through him. So suddenly you get this feeling that the storytelling characters are much more real and tangible than our main characters are, and that's a really interesting concept. And it's just like, it just goes to show the power of the relics and what they're capable of, you know, this sort of old world magic coming into play, basically. So but overall, it's an incredible 3D visual experience. I have it written over here like 3 times: 3D visual experience, 3D visual experience, 3D visual experience. You know what I'm saying? So she is Jin is literally the blue smoke, revealing the story overall. And starting off right at the beginning, we see Salem, you know, we see Salim, my beautiful Salim. Salim look good, bruh. Locked away in the tower. One of you guys mentioned in my volume 6 chapter 2 comments that look at the symbol or the sigil on Salem's tapestry, Salem's house, you know, and the symbol looks an awful lot like, not just one of you guys, several of you guys commented this. It looks very similar to, what do you call, John's shield or something like that. I went back and had to check it myself. It looks kind of similar. It doesn't look exact. It looks kind of similar. And I can see how you guys draw that reference, and you know, Salem does have yellow hair, and you know, John is also a blonde and whatnot, and the argument can be made that, you know, John is somehow maybe perhaps related to Salem in a distant line or something like that. Who knows? It's out in the air for that, but it is a good call, you know. I think it's a pretty interesting call, but that's like the symbolism of the sigil itself. Oh, and the other thing is, several of you guys mentioned that, because I mentioned in my previous chapter discussion, is that since Rwby asks Jin, is like, show us what Ozpin is hiding. I thought we were just gonna get the story from Ozpin's point of view, but that's not true at all. We got to see a lot of Salem's perspective as well. So many of you guys were right. We saw things from both Salem and Ozpin's perspective. They are the two key pieces of the story. That's why we see everything through them. Now, as we go through scene to scene, we see different characters seeing different moments within the story. One thing that stands out specifically is, you know, Salem being on Salem's being crouched over Ozma's deathbed, and Weiss is seeing that happen. Now, I haven't fully deciphered exactly what the significance of each character seeing those specific scenes is yet, but I'm sure that many people can draw upon correlation of, like, for example, why are we seeing Rwby see this scene? Why are we seeing Weiss see this specific scene? Why are we seeing Yang see this specific scene? You know what I'm saying? What are those scenes saying about our individual Team Rwby members and characters, or even Crow, you know, for that matter? Because when Ozma is first introduced, he's sort of introduced as this pure heart, righteous, you know, courageous individual, but Crow is the character that's witnessing that happen. So what is the significance of that? You know, even I don't know, but that's something that upon my like third or fourth watch of this, because I watched it like about 5 times, the initial reaction with you guys, and then once again while re-editing the video, a third time at the night of when I first watched it, fourth time sometime and the 5th time, of course, right before doing this discussion video. And every single time I watch it, I create a new page of notes. Like, it's crazy. This episode gets better and better as as I rewatch it. You know, this is crazy. This is a beautiful storytelling, story writing. I could talk about this all day. Anyway, let's go into another little detail that you guys mentioned. One of you guys mentioned about the curse on Oz. Oz always mentioned like his his reincarnative ability as a curse. The curse on Oz by the gods for failing to stop Salem in the past. But that's not exactly true, since he accepted it willingly to try and see her again, because he initially just wanted to be in the afterlife with Salem, but after, you know, the God of Light gave him the option to go back and, you know, sort of be this Messiah sort of character, you know, he didn't initially strike out into the world as being the Messiah. It wasn't until multiple lifetimes later that he ultimately assumed that purpose that he was given. He initially just wanted to be with Salem, and he was quite content with being Salem, even though Salem herself, as I'll dive into a little bit later, was trying to coerce him into doing exactly what she wants, because as we all know, the hearts of men are easily swayed. Holy shit. There's some really good quotable lines in this episode, man. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I absolutely love it. So like I said, we're going to talk about the old gods, the new gods, old world versus new world. So as the episode starts off, so let's start with the opening of the episode. We start off with the girl in the tower. We see Salem, and immediately Jin talks about being trapped in the tower by her cruel father. And the moment I heard that, when I was initially watching it, I was like, okay, so the cruel father must be an incredibly important plot point. How is he so powerful to be able to lock away Salem? Because Salem, as we see, exists in a world where everybody wields magic. And I'm kind of thinking back to what Syndrome said back in The Incredibles. It's like, when everybody is a superhero, pretty much nobody is. So when everybody wields magic, pretty much nobody does, because magic just becomes an extra tool. It's no longer, you can't really call it magic. It's nothing, it's not a thing of wonder anymore. It just becomes another tool to be used. It's only magic now because not everybody can do it. You know what I'm saying? Magic is literally the creation of something out of nothing, something mystical out of nothing. That's literally what magic is. There's no sort of, if I'm able to quote FMA, it's not a sort of equivalent exchange, so to speak. So she is able to do that, but she still can't escape this tower. And the reason is because there's literally like magical guards blocking her way. And since her father also has that magic, she can ultimately lock her in. And so she needs like an outside force, somebody stronger to help her get out. You know what I'm saying? So, and the Jid also states that she lives in a world filled with, you know, kings and queens and kingdom and everyday magic, and also a world where the gods literally exist in physical form amongst the humans, which is crazy, dude, which is crazy. This is old world shit, which is like freaking amazing. And it draws from a lot of like, you know, level 1, sticking within level 1, references to other mythos of, you know, I think back to like Fate Babylonia, Fate Grand Order Babylonia. If you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend you see it. It's an age where the gods lived among men, you know what I'm saying? And I constantly made references to that while watching it. It's just absolutely freaking phenomenal. But I focus so hard on like, why did Salem's father imprison her in the first place? And that sort of, is he like a villain as well, you know, trying to imprison his daughter? And that made me think, is like, what if Salem gave him reason to imprison her in the tower in the first place? You know, because we've seen what Salem does after she escapes. She continues to make mistakes, continues to submit to her own arrogance and selfishness. And maybe the father isn't a villain. Maybe he tried to imprison her for her own good or for the good of others. Maybe that made me think something like that. I don't know, but that's only because we've seen what ultimately happens to Salem and who she becomes. But without even knowing Salem, if the story just started off with showing her in this sort of Rapunzel status, this girl locked away in the tower, obviously our sympathies would remain with her. We would side with her, and she would be like our heroine of our story. However, we see later on that it wasn't until later that this sort of righteous, courageous hero shows up, and the literal scene of Ozma, based off of Princess Ozma from the original Wizard of Oz novels. Because for those of you guys who don't know, Princess Ozma is the rightful heir to the Kingdom of Oz, you know, before her title was stolen away by, you know, the original wizard who's from our world, you know, who's from Kansas, basically. We see Ozma. And Ozma's voice, it sounded an awful lot like Oscar's voice. Maybe it's the same voice actor. I don't know. You guys can leave in the comments if it was the same voice actor. But it sounded very similar, because I thought OG Ozpin was gonna have the original Ozpin voice from, you know, Volume 1 Ozpin. But surprisingly, it was Oscar's voice. And I'll delve into this a little bit later, because there's a key point where the voice changes. And you guys probably know the moment I'm talking about, and I'll delve into that when I reach there. But that shot of Ozma standing right in front of the castle, we see the green plains, we see a yellow brick road leading up into the castle, which literally looks like the castle within Emerald City. And I don't think this was just coincidence. I think, you know, obviously Rooster Teeth had that imagery in mind when they were trying to create this episode in the first place. So I absolutely loved it. It brought out that inner fanboy in me. And Ozma was standing there with a staff, with a green sort of, you know, magical rock on it, kind of like Deifect and Nethicite or something like that. So kind of like Magicite, you know, and it reminded me, of course, of the cane. So that makes me think that maybe Ozpin's cane, or Oscar's cane right now, is some remnant of that old staff. Or maybe within that little clockwork hilt is maybe that emerald still there, you know? Because we see the emerald come back several times. Every iteration of Ozpin in a different lifetime has that sort of emerald. Like even in the second version of Ozma, we see that little green gem there in the necklace. So what's the significance of that? I think it's just I think it's a totem, you know. I think it's like Ozma's totem that sort of you know, reveals to us as the audience member that that's who he is. That's a little piece of him, you know what I'm saying? But there's a little bit more to what his reincarnation is that I'll delve into. And I have a little theory about every time he reincarnates, there's something extra. there's something extra. It's not something that's taken away, but there's something extra that's added, and I'll discuss what that is exactly. But okay, so Ozma storms into the place, and he pretty much tries to rescue Salem, or maybe he just entered the tower. We're actually not revealed to his true purpose for entering the tower, because he enters the tower not for the maiden's hand, as a lot of other warriors have done and have fallen on the battlefield, and you can literally see their weapons, you know, kind of like the unlimited blade works on the fields. But he was trying to do it for righteousness and courageousness, and for, you know, because Ozma always had this like good sense of morale, you know. He was a hero. He was like one of the oldest heroes in this world, quite possibly the oldest hero in Remnant. You know, he is the oldest hero in Remnant, because what was the world called before? It was called Remnant, you know what I'm saying? Just the world, just Earth, you know. But yeah, and that'll play into what I think each of their individual characters are. Because one thing I'll tell you guys right now is what had me thinking is that Ozma, no matter what version of Ozma we see in the future, past this initial like, you know, image of him standing in front, like, you know, courageously with a sword in hand and staff with one, you know, a sword, he's holding his hand on the sword hilt and his staff on the other. It's like he's a magic knight. Oh yeah, he literally is a magic knight. Ozma's a magic knight. Yeah, that's freaking sweet. It didn't occur to me. Whereas, like, you know, Salem is more of like a black mage. No matter what iteration of Salem or Ozma we see in the future, one thing is inevitably clear, or unavoidably clear. I'm forgetting my vocabulary. And that's Ozma and Salem change very little, no matter the era that they exist in. Ozma and Ozpin will always be this original version of Ozma, this sort of courageous but very vulnerable sort of hero. You know, he's courageous, he stands for morals, true justice, and the righteous way, you know, but overall he was always a very vulnerable human being. I mean, he where all the blades in the world couldn't kill him, an illness did. So he was also very human. He's very vulnerable. Man, I'm sweating right now talking about this shit. He's very vulnerable, but he's also very righteous at the same time. So that's what Ozma is. No matter what iteration of Ozma you see, no matter how many lies he tells, no matter what direction he chooses to take his pathways, or, you know, how many people betray him, he will always be that person. But Salem, on the other hand, no matter how many years pass, no matter what events happen to her, she will always be this girl locked away in the tower. She always will be. Even if you see her now, she's still literally a girl locked away in the tower. Have we seen her outside this like domain of darkness shit, which I'll go into in a little bit. But I love how it's like Salem and Ozma rescues Salem from the tower, obviously, and Salem has this like funny, like old school romance movie moments, like, oh, he saved my life, thank you, you know. And they like both, like, you know, fight their way out, and they find, it's crazy because there's this moment where Jin says that Salem, who has always been trying to find freedom her whole life, finds it not in, you know, leaving the castle, but in the man who rescued her. And there's this beautiful love story that sort of builds between Salem and Ozma, and I love it. It's like an old school love story, and I'm a sucker for old school love stories. I watch, like, you know, romance stuff on Korean drama and Japanese drama, and I'm a sucker for that stuff. But that's what, you know, like, I thought, you know, maybe there could have been like a familial relationship with them, but I like this a lot more. I like that, you know, one of you guys, I forgot who it was, one of you guys mentioned that it was, oh yeah, Synapse mentioned is like, man, this man has issues, man. Welcome to Remnant's worst divorce. Yeah, this is literally, where's Maori? Maori needs to come in and talk about, you know, the divorce cases for, you know, Salem and freaking Ozpin, man. Like, this is some funny shit. Like, I can't wait to see your guys' memes, man. I can't wait to see your guys' memes on this chapter alone. Oh my freaking goodness. Because, yeah, like, but going back to the actual episode itself, I love that this is, like, you know, a love story between these two characters, and how the love has turned into fear and animosity and hate and complete, like, opposition, you know. I absolutely love that. I love that you guys told me that this was, who was it that told me that? It's like, yeah, by the way, the story bit is one they had from the very start of the show. As Synapse mentioned, Monty's original vision spans the entire show from start to end, even if only in rough outlines. So that's freaking phenomenal, you know. I love it. You know, Monty Ohm came up with this stuff, and I think Rooster Teeth really did justice to the story through the animation, through the colors, through the visuals of, you know, this new Maya engine, and of course, you know, everything all together. Man, I'm sweating right now. Give me a little second. Let me take a little water break. Salem and Ozpin have like this glorious adventure together. They fall in love. They have this like, you know, I imagine them having like some weird Anakin Padme moment in the meadows among like waterfalls and whatnot, and some very, you know, cheesy romance scenes and stuff, of course. But it obviously doesn't last very long, and Ozma unfortunately passes away due to an unusual illness. But I even, while watching the episode itself, I was thinking like, holy crap, is the illness even significant? I thought Salem's dad was significant. Maybe the illness is significant too, but I don't know if that'll become an important story piece going forward, maybe later, sometime later on. Getting back into this, man, I'm having such a fun time talking about this episode. That's how you know this episode was so freaking good, man. Let's talk about the gods. Level 2, we're entering some level 2 shit. We're still in level 1, mind you, but we might enter some level 2 stuff. So we literally exist in an era when the gods pretty much have authority over all humanity, and they exist among them in physical form in 2 domains, the domain of light and domain of darkness. And I love how they're both visually depicted. Dude, the domain of light looks like one of those paintings from like Hinduism, polytheistic pictures of mythologies and locations. There's this sort of life tree, this tree of life that exists within this sort of fountain of youth, you know, or at the center of a fountain of youth. So much life emanating from like these golden leaves, like, you know, that the golden color on the leaves flowing in and circling around the mystical water, and then the god of light emerges from there. When the god of light emerged, I was like losing my mind. Holy shit, I didn't expect to see the freaking gods, bro. You know what I'm saying? It's so freaking good. I was losing my mind. But one thing before that, that sort of you know, led up to that, is that Salem wanted to go to the gods, and she asked herself, like, how could the gods let this happen? Even Jin was saying that Salem was thinking, how could the gods let this happen? How could the gods give me this taste of freedom and then ultimately take away that same freedom? And Salem's, I'll go into this a little bit later, because I made a very important note that Salem's perspective of freedom changes over time, but she remains the girl locked away in the tower, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But you know, first let's talk about the domain of the gods. Like, she literally brings an offering, and the offering looks very similar to what you often see in South Asian cultures. That sort of flower beads, you know, you put around. You obviously, you guys have seen, like in Bollywood movies, you take this like sort of circular flower. The sort of flower necklace and put it around individuals, but she was holding sort of like a, you know, like the flower petal version of that, you know, with like the stem and everything, and she places it on the stairs, like, and you see not just one offering, you see a whole bunch of offerings. So a lot of people come here to pray to the gods, and they literally look up to the gods, and Salem walks in, and Jin has this sort of coat. You know, she says that code is like, this is where the elder brother, the god of light, existed, but this is also the same location where mankind would fall to ruin. And when I heard that line, when I heard that line initially, I got like shivers down my spine, bro. Shivers all the way running down my spine. I got goosebumps. I don't know, maybe it's just the way Jin said it, or just the musical cues, or just the overall panning shot of like the tree of life and the location itself. I don't know, man. That scene got me thinking like, holy shit, we are about to see some good stuff. Some good stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, and undoubtedly we do. We see the god of light emerge, and one thing that struck me strangely, not just god of light but god of destruction as well, they both have like antlers, you know, different types of antlers, but they both have like antlers, like whereas the god of destruction has like more like a ram like antlers, you know what I'm saying, which signifies more like to do with like the devil and whatnot. What do you call the god of light has more of like, you know, just like, you know, very deer like antlers, which, you know, symbolism of more of like a, you know, a positive image, so to speak. But another thing is that I forgot to mention, they kind of look like faunas, you know. Yeah, like, I mean, they kind of look like faunas. I mean, in this original world, the old world, there were no faunas. At least I don't think there weren't any faunus, because when Ozma comes back, Jin mentions that, you know, Ozma is in a world that didn't seem familiar to him. There's this new thing called dust. There's this new almost caged in creatures called faunus. It's just crazy how the world developed afterwards. So maybe the rise of the faunus, I'm going off on a tangent, I know, bear with me. Maybe the rise of the faunus is somehow a remnant of the gods leaving, since the faunus look very similar to the gods in a certain respect. Maybe, I don't know. I even have some theories on what dust is now, you know. So going back to the gods, I loved like the different domains. Like the domains, one is purely like filled with life and energy. The other literally looks like, you know, there's skeletons and grim about, and this blackened pool of annihilation, you know, like, you know, pouring out bubbles. And that makes sense, because that's exactly where Salem is. And the fact that both of the gods are like literally dragons, obviously Salem, I think Salem's little dark fortress is in the little continent on the top left-hand corner of the world map, because it looks like the god of destruction's dragon, and, you know, the god of light's domain must be located in the god of where the Shenron dragon continent is, somewhere there. I think that's still connected to Anima. That's technically Anima, right? Like Mistral? No, Mistral, yeah. Talked about the domains, I talked about their appearance, their behaviors. Yo, these are some of my most favorite depicted deities in anime. I'm not gonna lie, because of their individual behaviors. You see that the god of light initially comes on to talk with Salem and you know, about, you know, bringing Ozma back and whatnot, and he has this you know, very parental to child like discussion. Is like he you know, he puts his hand together, talks very calmly. It's like, you know, he pities Salem, and, you know, understands her loss, but he literally states that life and death are part of a delicate balance. To disrupt it would be to bring ultimate chaos. You know what I'm saying? But Salem obviously doesn't listen. Whereas the god of destruction is so easy to bring his Ozma back to life, and there is obviously reason for it, but I just love the duality in their behaviors. The older brother versus the younger brother. Older brother seems more wiser, more in control of his emotions, but the younger brother seems more prone to animosity and, like, you know, to conflict, you know. But it drives into their nature. But one thing I loved even more than that, one thing I would have disliked in this episode is if Salem was able to turn the gods against one another. But what I absolutely loved is that they didn't turn against one another. They saw the wrongness. It's like, dude, this lowly human being that we created is trying to play God with us, the deities? Hell to the freaking no! It's like, little brother, this Salim came to you only after I turned her down, you know? Because the god of destruction initially brought Ozma back because Salem was doing that thing she always does. She lies, she manipulates. She said that she only came to the god of destruction, you know, without telling him that, you know, she went to the god of light first. She kept that part out so that the god of destruction would assume that, you know, she came to him first. You know what I mean? Like, and nobody comes to the god of destruction because he's like the harbinger of death and doom and gloom, you know what I'm saying? And there's literally skeletons, and people can't, I'm assuming most people can't get past the grim, and Salem is more powerful than the average individual, I assume. Plus she has Ozma's staff, you know what I'm saying? That ain't no just random piece of equipment. So for the first time, the god of destruction sees somebody kneeling down before him and giving him worship. So obviously he's going to like play into that a little bit. But there's this interesting scene where the god of destruction is bringing Ozma back, right? And there's this orb of purple energy, and within that purple energy, through that, you see Salem's appearance, like Salem's facial appearance changing, like she's getting what she wants, you know? Take a little look at the episode, but you'll see like Salem her face turns from excitement to like a sort of smug look. It's like, oh, my plan is working. She like turns from excitement to, oh, I got my Ozma back, to like, oh, I can actually like thwart these mofos. You know what I'm saying? It's a very small second scene, but it's I think one that like Rooster Teeth put in there very deliberately over there. But I love their behavior, and then the ultimate point, you know, the god of light like literally sends Salem away. It's like, let him rest. It's like, bitch, I'm tired of your ass, get the fuck out, you know. It's like, it literally zooms her away into the next, like, right outside the domain, you know. I freaking love that. And then after, you know, the god of destruction brings Ozma back. Dude, Ozma, bro, he got the short end of the stick. This dude died more times than anybody else in freaking history, man. He got brought back. Who am I? What's happening? Where am I?
Where am I? What is this? Where am I?
And then the god of light shows up as like, what have you done? And then he's like, I did what I must, brother. You know, like, I think back to like Loki and Thor from the MCU movies. It's just, dude. Zooms, like, you know, snaps, what do you call, Ozma out of existence. And then he's like, how dare you, god of destruction, brings him back. I just love that. I know it's terrible. It's terrible what's happening to freaking Ozma, but it's just that overpowering deity-ness that, you know, like, that they exude. It's like the humanity and life is just something like that. They can bring it back and take it away with just like a little you know, snap of their fingers. It's so easy to manipulate life and destruction because they're gods. They're depicted in that shape and form, and they have very little care for how they manipulate it, at least in this instant. But they're both acknowledged that there needs to be this sort of balance. You know, the god of light acknowledges that destruction is a part of life, and the god of destruction acknowledges that life is a part of death. You know, I love that aspect of it. And then they both start to have conflict, as told by, you know, like, you know, back in volume 4 where Crow was talking about, was it volume 4? Yeah, I think it was volume 4. Yeah, back in volume 4 where Crow was telling them the story of the two brothers about life, creation, and destruction, and they ultimately came into, you know, a resolution. That is easily displayed over here in this episode too, because they don't start fighting one another. Yeah, they take their freaking awesome ass dragon forms. By the way, one of the dragons, the god of destruction's dragon, he looks like they're very different types of dragons, obviously. But one looks like a very medieval Eastern, you know, Western type of depiction of a dragon, you know, with the, you know, the body looking more like a lizard with the hands and feet, whereas the other looks more Eastern type, which it makes sense because one dragon continent is in the West, one dragon continent is the East. Rooster Teeth, I see what you're doing, and I freaking love it, bro. But yeah, I love how they have that, you know, pure resolution just from one conversation. Is like they trust one another, they believe in one another. It's like, my older brother isn't lying to me. He said that's like, this woman only came to you after I denied her pleas, you know, a plea that would have disrupted the balance that you and I built together. And then the god of destruction takes a moment, like a second, to think about it, and it's like, then I owe you an apology. Boom! You know, like a destruction blast, and like zooms away Ozma, leaving Salem to just wield his ashes. And it's a very sad moment, but, you know, it's one that Salem sort of deserves because of doing that to the deities. And of course, you know, Mute Parasol mentioned is like, what do you think about the gods? Yeah or nay? Are they a force of good? Did they do the right thing? Are we better off without them? Of course, did they do the right thing is like, you know, the clench thing, and I'll talk about that when I get to it. Are they a force for good? I think good and evil, you can't, when you're talking about deities, you can't really talk about good and evil. They kind of exist beyond that, right? And I think fundamentally this balance that was kept between light and dark was good, you know? Whereas the other thing that they do, I think even though they wipe out humanity in that most epic way possible, they still try to maintain balance to a certain extent, because Salem exists, but then the god of light brings back Ozpin too to, you know, balance Salem's darkness out. You know what I'm saying? There's always this sort of balance. So are they a force for good? It's hard to say. That you can't say. I don't think you can honestly say a good or bad, because they're just deities, man. What do I think about the gods? I freaking love them. Bro. You know what I'm saying? The god of destruction might be my new favorite character, bro. I'm just saying, the god of destruction is like, dude, the line that he says, the exit that he makes, the silhouette against the moon that he concocts, bro, is so epic. Still demanding things of your creators. Boom, son! Silhouette against the moon, son! So freaking awesome, man. And I'll talk about the Salem's present day motivations in a little bit. Are we better off without them? Yeah, it depends. I think with are we better off without them? Yes and no. Well, no, it's just yes, because without, if they were still here, we wouldn't have the story of Rwby that we do now, right? We would have some alternate story, basically. If you guys have played Final Fantasy 15, I know I'm delving in to another direction, but that story, if you follow the villain storyline, if you talk about Arden Izunia is the main villain of Final Fantasy 15, and I really felt for that character because his life was turned into a tragedy because of the gods. He is kind of like a Salem in that game, but a Salem that you can actually get behind. Someone who isn't just arrogant and selfish, but someone who's, you know, who sees the gods as like this sort of very ancient, you know, sort of this overpower controlling the fate and destiny of the world, you know. So oftentimes deities can come off as being negative, so but these deities I actually like because, dude, they were trying to balance shit out, and Salem came and tried to disrupt that balance, and they just said, like, you know what, we're gonna just start over, go somewhere else, we're gonna go on vacation, you guys deal with your shit. If you guys, you know, come back and, you know, we like your shit, we'll keep you. If not, then, you know, Shark Tank, you know. So it's like some crazy shit, man. Right after that, we get, you know, Salem being whisked away into the fountain of life and granting her immortality, and this is where we get the end game of Rwby. You know what I'm saying? It says that the final edict to Salem is that, yeah, so the gods, both brothers come together and literally tell her that as long as this world turns, you shall walk its face. You must learn the importance of life and death, and only then may you rest. You know, it's dude, that's so good. That's gonna go into my level 3 theorizing and whatnot. So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe, hit that like button, and feel free to share the video, and I'll see you guys next time.